Three, two, one, and we are live again on Counterbalance with Akeem Alptekin. This is the third and final segment of my interview with Akeem. It is being recorded after the first two were broadcast on YouTube, so we got to see some reactions, and I think Akeem heard some reactions from friends. We had a little bit of a technical problem with the recording of the second segment. That's the reason for the delay. We apologize for that. Unfortunately, because of the coronavirus crisis, all of the staff here in the studio of Counterbalance TV has been furloughed. But I want you to know that I have paid them 100% of their salaries during this furlough period. No, okay, so we're back with Akeem Alptekin. Akeem, you are the world's greatest spy ever, or spy master. You managed to run a three-star American general and then place him as National Security Advisor to the President of the United States, all on behalf of the Turkish government. Congratulations, Akeem. That's a fantastic achievement in the world of spycraft.
Well, I think case officers are not in the habit of signing a commercial agreement with the people that they recruit and then registering it under the Lobbying Disclosure Act. But that's what I was made out to be almost. That's the narrative, yes.
Well, that was some bad tradecraft on your part to register it that way. Listen, what I think we should do in this segment is talk a little deeper about how about the nature of your contract with General Flynn, and then also how you got sucked into the Mueller probe, and then little bit about some of the public reaction that we've seen to your case in general and to the interview that we did yesterday. But let's start with let's start with the nature of the contract with General Flynn. Did you hire him to lobby Congress to carry out operations? There's a lot of wild stories out there about you even hiring him, talking to him about kidnapping Gulen and secreting him back to Turkey. Was there an operational component to this contract?
Not at all. It was 80% of the contract, and almost 100% of my expectation was research. I mean, it was a very short period. So in 3 months, there's only so much you can do. So I wanted them to concentrate mostly on finding out what really the obstacles were to Turkish-American relations. And of course, we knew the focus would be on the Gulenists. We may run into some other issues, but the focus was on Gulenists and what they were doing, how they operate, and what kind of laws they might be violating in the United States. It's difficult to explain, we've discussed this before, how they really operate, because they work to so many fronts. Their membership is not transparent. So the idea was, we've seen 60 Minutes did a special on visa fraud. They applied to these H-1B visas. So instead of hiring an American in these schools, they usually bring in Turks. I don't know why you need a Turkish citizen to teach English in the United States, but I think they have more H-1B visas than Google. And of course, some people in the State Department and other places have cooperated with this. And I wanted to get a better understanding on how much money they were getting. It turns out it was about $750 million a year. Year over year, so that's annually how much taxpayers' money these people are getting for their schools, and it's mostly, I guess, for rent and for salaries. But the problem is, as 60 Minutes also exposed, is that a high percentage of these salaries are being reimbursed. So they bring in their own members of their cult, they appoint them as teachers, they get paid $5,000–6,000, and then they give part of this back to the organization. So that's why these people are left with a lot of, hundreds of millions of dollars that they can spend on PR and lobbying and other issues. So while we're talking about the $500,000 that I spent on investigating what they're doing, they have no obligation to register because they're working through American fronts. and they're spending millions. And they were working with Podesta.
Oh, that's interesting. Again, this is Tony Podesta, who is a lobbyist in Washington who does the same kind of work that you were asking General Flynn's company to do, and who has never been prosecuted under FARA or, I mean, to my knowledge, I didn't.
No, he hasn't been. I mean, he had to close his company because his friends probably said, we can't prosecute the others while you're still operating. So he had to close his company, but he was not prosecuted. No.
But anyway, the point here is that that the kind of activities that you were asking General Flynn's company to do are very common in Washington. But
yeah, I'm not saying Podesta should be prosecuted, by the way. I mean, it's standard operating procedure, especially in DC. I think if you would look across the aisle in terms of how many companies are doing this and how much money is being made, the Flynn Intel Group is probably the smallest of the smallest. I think in the history of American lobbying, I don't think there's ever been a three-star general or a former high-level official that's made less money of lobbying than General Flynn.
So the contract was mainly to sort of survey the universe of activities that the Gulenists were involved in.
Yes, and if we would run into some criminal crimes or other issues, the idea was to refer them to the authorities.
And so
instead of committing a crime, we were trying to uncover crimes and refer this to the authorities.
And you did not ask General Flynn to come up with an operational plan to kidnap Gulen from the Poconos and fly him back or sail him back to Turkey.
I mean, what a ridiculous idea this is. Do you think if I had said anything that comes close to that, they would have never signed an agreement. They would never talk to me again. And the idea that the Turkish government would want something like this is also preposterous. Imagine we were successful in kidnapping this guy. I mean, who's gonna kidnap a permanent residence on U.S. soil and then bring him back to the country? I mean, it's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. Actually, the Flynn Intel Group recommended in the end that he should not even be, that the government of Turkey should re-pull its request for extradition because it's creating too much noise and it's not allowing the American public to really understand, you know, what they are doing in the United States. So instead of focusing on the extradition, the focus should be on what this Islamic cult is doing in the United States in the first place, because they have schools on U.S. Air Force bases, for example. Is that something the American public wants, an Islamic cult that operates schools on Air Force bases? I don't think so. So the final recommendation they came up with is not even in line with Turkish policy.
Wow, I was not aware of that. I mean, it's really a topsy-turvy world then, so that the people who are blowing the whistle on the Gulenists, asking the American people to understand who they are, what they're doing, the damage that they're doing to U.S.-Turkish relations, the damage that they're doing inside Turkey to Turkish politics, carrying out a coup and so on. You guys are the ones who are presented as the nefarious force working behind the scenes to illegally influence American politics, and they skate. That's the picture you're painting.
It's not going to last. At some point, I believe very much the truth always comes out. The question is if it's going to come out through the judicial system or not. That's also part of why I decided to talk to you, because, I mean, after the first two parts were aired through your YouTube channel, I got some phone calls from friends who were very worried. They said, you shouldn't do this because the prosecutor is going to punish you for this. And truthfully, you know, I can't speak for the prosecutor, but I think, why should I be punished for speaking up and telling people my honest opinion? And it's not their job to punish me. It's, you know, they should be crime fighting. But of course, the idea is now globally that if they can do this to a three-star general, imagine what they can do to me. And I think that's at the heart of the issue.
No, exactly. I mean, look, far be it from me to suggest anything to you about how to deal with this. I can only imagine how difficult it is. But I clearly, the American system is broken in some very significant way. And I'm not sure whether you're getting good advice or bad advice from these people. Of course, I benefit, or my YouTube channel benefits from you coming on. But it looks to me like at this point you kind of have to make your case public, and you have to explain yourself. If you just go through the legal processes, then the prosecutors can either lie or put out little bits of information that paint a picture that's completely false. I mean,
they've done this already, and that's why the media, and I also think the jury was influenced by that, and that's why they came up with a decision that no rational jury, as the judge said, should have concluded. But President Trump recently tweeted that what happened to General Flynn should never happen to an American citizen again. And I wholeheartedly agree with him. But I have an addition to that. It should never happen to anyone. It shouldn't happen to people who are not American citizens either, especially not good friends of the United States. Yeah.
You know, there's a funny dimension of this, and that's that, as you have made clear, you know, you're not an unknown quantity in Washington, D.C. I know lots of people in Washington, D.C. who know you and who know you well, who know you better than I know you. And none of them have stood up and said, I know this guy, I know what he's about, this idea is nonsensical. And I can only assume that they haven't done it for one of two motives. One is fear that they're going to get, that if they stand up and say, I know him, he's a friend of mine, that they're going to find that they're going to have all of their communications suddenly investigated. And the other one is just politics, partisan politics. Nobody wants to be seen to be supporting Trump and Flynn, and it's a shame because this is a miscarriage of justice. I'm not going to pretend to be neutral in this. To me, it's obvious that this is a tremendous miscarriage of justice.
Look, Mike, I've donated to causes I believe in the past. This contract had a commercial rationale for me as well. I was working with an Israeli gas company. I was hoping to leverage this relationship for that as well. There were other issues why I was excusing almost to myself, telling myself that there was a commercial rationale. But in the end, I'm a patriot. It was right after the coup. I very much believe in this cause, and I decided to go ahead. I did believe the government of Turkey would step in at some point or later, or maybe there would be a bigger contract in which I would get compensated, but it didn't happen. But bottom line is, it's not, as you said, it's not the first time. I didn't show up as a secret agent in the United States. I was the chairman of a trade organization. I worked on the Hill in the past. I've traveled frequently to the United States. I have an investment. I had an investment in Albuquerque. I've donated to Native Americans causes as well. So was it the Turkish government who told me to give $15,000 to a Native American school? It's nonsense. I always donated in causes that I believe in, and none of that was ever prosecuted. So again, it's not what I did, but it's who I did it with. That's the problem. If Hillary Clinton would be president right now, and if I was working happily with Tony Podesta, there would be no issue whatsoever.
Right.
Nobody would be talking about this. And another thing I wanted to say, I saw that the FBI director, the current FBI director, testified in the Judiciary Committee about 2 months ago about the FISA court fraud and the conclusions of the Inspector General, what went wrong there. And I commend him for saying that they've taken precautions. And he said the American people can sleep well again, and they shouldn't be worried. The problem is, we're not sleeping well. I think many Americans are not sleeping well either. My family certainly isn't. I don't think the Flynn family is sleeping well, or Bijan Kian's family is sleeping well. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, and there should be equal justice for everyone, and it should be clear what these laws are. Once you start using obscure laws like the Logan Act issue, I mean, it has no legitimacy whatsoever. And I think it's not just unfair to me. I think it's bad for the United States.
Let's get to how. By the way, I agree with you on all that you say, and I'd take it a step further. Just for the record, it's not simply that the rights of General Flynn and your rights and your interests have been harmed. It has harmed the United States and the American people because this was part of an effort to nullify an election. So I mean, it goes to the heart of the legitimacy of our institutions. But enough of editorializing from me. Let's go back to your case. How can you walk us through how you were first indicted, and then how your case got pulled into the Mueller investigation?
I think, as I said, the moment General Flynn published that article, that op-ed about the Gulenists, they started attacking him. They probably directed the several public relations efforts that they have to target him as someone who should not be in government, because that was an existential issue for them, because he made it very clear that if he would be in government, he would target this Islamic cult. Understandably, they didn't want him in any position of power. So when they started fueling all these conspiracies and crazy ideas, including my engagement with him, I think it originally started with the FARA department, well-intentionedly looking at, wait a minute, did something go wrong there? Should they have filed? I think that I'm hoping that that's how it started. And while the prosecution, the national security prosecutors at the Justice Department were looking into this, the Mueller investigation started. And I think it got politicized somewhere there. That's my guess, because if the intention was from the beginning to arrest me or do anything, I was there a lot. So why not arrest me? I mean, they could have prevented me from leaving the country if they had any inkling of me being involved in a major criminal conspiracy, as they say now. They probably would have not been very difficult for them to prevent me from leaving the country.
So what was the date that you were indicted?
It was I think it was the end of 2008. So it was December 2018 that the indictment was released. So I don't know when they really came up with it, but they made it public in December 2018.
Okay, so that's
look at what they did with I mean, to really answer your question, you have to look at the entire spectrum. And bottom line is, they accused the president of the United States of being a Russian asset. Look at what they did with Carter Page and George Papadopoulos, and I'm saying his name correctly. I don't know any of these people. They linked us together in different graphs. They said I had links to Russian intelligence. They almost made me look like an agent of Putin. I don't know a single Russian guy. I can't get a single Russian person to be a character witness for me. But I would probably find hundreds of Americans who would be willing to do that. So there was this crazy narrative that was being fueled, partly by the Gulenists, I know that, but of course, you and I both know that there was this politicized environment where there was a certain establishment. I don't like the other term that's being used, but who considered Donald Trump to be a national security risk. And if you want to get rid of Trump, at that time, you first needed to get rid of some people around him, including General Flynn.
So you mentioned that character witnesses. Let me just share with the viewers that you shared with me 2 letters of recommendation that you have, one from George W. Bush and one from Tom Lantos. I will share those in one form or another in the, or at least provide links to them in the description component of this video. And also I'll provide a link to the indictment that's online.
Sure.
The text of the indictment, it makes it, the language sounds like you were working for the Turkish government. And let me explain to you what I mean and then get your reaction. Because they have lots of quotes from emails from you saying, I talked to Minister so-and-so and there's great interest and so on, which makes you sound very much like you are working on behalf of the government. And I think you've explained, and I understand that, why that language is misleading, but maybe you could just address it specifically.
I mean, it's very clear. I was pitching to the government. I was not working for the government. I wasn't lobbying the American government on behalf of the Turkish government. I was actually lobbying my own government to hire the Flynn Intel Group. So I was lobbying as a businessman, as a Dutch businessman, my own government, to hire an American firm to do independent investigative work about the Gulenists. I believed it was not fruitful for our government to constantly go to the United States back and forth and to say bad things about the Gulenists in terms of what they'd done in Turkey. And it turned out there was very little willing ear to listen to that, especially under the Obama administration. So it was my idea, and I still think that's a very good idea, is to look at what they're doing in the United States, to make it more public, the amount of dollars that they're getting from the US taxpayer, and what they're doing with it. And I think this will make them, especially this imam, the leader of them, this Fethullah Gülen, will be exposed as, for what he really is if you do this properly. And that was my intention. And I did speak to Turkish government officials. I was doing that in my capacity as chairman of a trade organization as well. And there was a willing ear on the Turkish side to do this. They were considering it. But you have to understand the environment. It was very short after a coup attempt had taken place. Obviously, these people, especially the higher level people, were very, very busy. They did make certain representations to me that led me to believe that they would end up the Flynn Intel Group, and I actually believe that they would have. I think they would have. Of course, the entire issue became very toxic the moment these news stories came out about my engagement with Flynn not being above board. So the government of Turkey, for who I'm supposedly working, simply did not carry further any of these discussions, which is very understandable under the circumstances.
So this makes total sense. I mean, at least to me, that you're, on the one hand, you were just operating from Turkish patriotic motives, and a concern for U.S.-Turkish relations, and you invested your own money, and then you were willing to spend that money out of pocket, whether or not the Turkish government ever got interested. But at the same time, you're going to the Turkish government and saying, "Hey guys, this is the way to go. This is what I suggest to you if you want to solve this problem." That's the story?
Exactly, and it's not the first time I did that. There's other firms that I recommended. Some of them were hired, some of them weren't. But they had nothing to do with the Gulenists. So that's why there's no, there's no controversy surrounding them. And the firms involved are not people close to President Trump, and that's why there's nothing there either. But it's not. I've been doing this for a very long time. There's the annual Turkish-American conference that's being held in DC for more than 3 decades now, almost 4 decades. I've been going to this conference. I've been there for at least 10 years consecutively. Of course, I haven't been attending the last 2 years. But before that, I think the first time I attended was 2001, right after 9/11. So I've been engaged on these issues. I remember a letter I got from my Dutch school director when I graduated from high school. Of course, they gave a letter to every student who graduated, but my letter said something about me having an above average interest in societal issues. I still have that. The interesting thing is when someone like George Soros spends billions of dollars, that's very hard to argue that he has any commercial interest in doing so. I mean, if George Soros is allowed to spend money, billions, on his political views, why am I not able to do so?
Yeah, I know. I mean, clearly they've criminalized activities that people engage in every day here in Washington, D.C., and frankly, activities that we want people to engage in. Because if it weren't for people like you, we wouldn't be able to understand the nature of the Gulen movement and the damage that it's done to U.S.-Turkish relations.
And I'll tell you another thing. You're being ridiculed globally if you support President Trump. I used to be a very respected interlocutor of Turkish-American affairs. People called me about my opinion, etc. But the moment I started supporting Donald Trump, I believed he would be a better president than Hillary Clinton. People start ridiculing you, and it's really mostly a PR effort. So I don't think everything Donald Trump says makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't, but I don't think everything Hillary Clinton says makes sense either. And It's a political preference. It's not about, somehow the arrogance that these people have. They think that their opinion is more worthy than others. And it's like Hillary Clinton called his supporters deplorable. And we've seen the same dynamic, Mike, in Turkey. Look, everyone who supports President Erdogan in Turkey is being called the exact same name. So, they call Erdogan an enemy of Christians. They call Trump an enemy of Muslims. A lot of people ask me, as a Muslim, why do you support President Trump? He hates Muslims. He doesn't hate Muslims. He loves his country. It's a different thing. And for him to want to make America great again doesn't mean he wants to make the world bad again. I mean, America is a global superpower. America cannot be great if the world is bad. I mean, anyone in his right mind understands if your neighbor's house is on fire, you can continue eating in your own home. At some point, the smoke is going to sip through and ruin your dinner. So America does not have the luxury of completely ruining the world. Why would he want to? I think it's the opposite. I think President Trump understood early on that the United States should invest in more stability and in more prosperity instead of more warmongering on other issues. And again, I'm not saying that Hillary is a warmonger. She probably, whatever she did and wanted to do is because she believes it's in the best interest of the country. But why is it any different for President Trump? You see my point? So there's a media effort to make these people look very bad. Erdogan is an enemy of Christians. Trump is an enemy of Muslims. It's all nonsense. These people want what's best for their country. You don't have to support them. I don't always do. But the arrogance of people believing that their political preference somehow deserves priority, that's what's maddening.
Okay, I mean, I think we've covered just about everything. I guess one last question for you is about the Bijan Kian case and its relationship to your case. I mean, I gather one of the reasons that you have stepped forward to talk right now is that you feel that the judge's decision in the Bijan Kian case puts your case in a very different light in terms of public opinion. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe you could just talk a little bit about the relationship between yourself, Bijan Kian, and his case.
I mean, it's not so much in the public opinion because the media is not reporting it. The media was reporting all the accusations, even accusations that never made it to the indictment. I mean, all this stuff about kidnapping and, corruption and illegal payments, none of this is in the indictment. I'm not indicted for corruption. I'm not indicted for bribing someone. I'm not indicted for trying to kidnap someone. But all of these accusations have been very broadly reported in the media. But the final dismissal of the case, based on the fact that there was no evidence, that no rational jury could convict someone on the basis of what was presented by the prosecution, that received very little attention. So that's part of maybe why I'm doing this, but it's mostly, look, I felt a responsibility not in any way to influence the rule of law and the justice system and the course of justice and this trial in the United States. And since I did not present myself in court, I also felt like it's better if I sit down and don't talk. Otherwise, I should go and defend myself in court. So that's why I stayed silent. So I waited until the Flynn issue matured, until Bijan Kian's trial was over. But I'm now understanding, this is my personal opinion, I'm very sorry if the prosecution wants to punish me for this, that they're trying to drag this on until the election. So it keeps hanging over President Trump, some cloud that keeps hanging over him, so they can say that people in his close circle were involved in all these nefarious issues, as you said. And now that I see that, especially now with General Flynn's, the information that we always knew, but now it's verifiable that the FBI was not out for truth or admission. I mean, it's their own notes that I'm quoting. They were out to get him to lie, which is entrapment at best, and then so they can prosecute him, blackmail him, pressure him, and of course get him fired, so they don't have to deal with it. So now that we know all of this, now that this is out, and now that Bijan's case has been dismissed, although the prosecutor, of course, took it to a higher court, which is mind-boggling to me, But I feel a responsibility to speak up. And I think I was first convicted in the court of public opinion because of mainstream media. And I think the best place to be acquitted is in the court of public opinion. I mean, in the end, look, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you said they accused me of being a spy. Look, not only spies don't enter into an agreement that they then go and register. They don't make these payments from their personal accounts, etc. I mean, the entire case is based on a narrative, not on evidence. And it has no legitimacy whatsoever. And at some point, they have to stop punishing me for something I didn't do. And so we can continue with our lives.
What about all these encrypted emails that we see quoted in the press? Where did these encrypted email conversations between you and General Flynn? Where did those come from? Or maybe
we live in
you and Bijan Kian.
Yeah, we live in a world where there's very little privacy, and if you're going to investigate an obscure, secretive cult that has a lot of money and a lot of people integrated into intelligence communities globally, and all of this is public knowledge about them. I mean, and you don't want this to come out. Of course, you use encrypted emails, but we all of us have experience with using higher grade encryption, stuff that would be very, very easy to decrypt. We didn't do that. So we weren't worried about the American government reading our emails, because we all know, especially General Flynn does because of his background, but Bijan also knows. And I worked at Interpol, it was a decade ago, but as a former person who's worked at that level in the law enforcement, I also know that the government has certain abilities that allows them to decrypt these emails. So if our audience, if we tried to hide something from them, we wouldn't, first of all, we wouldn't have written anything down. Second, we would not have decrypted these emails and given them as part of the subpoena. It was our legal obligation to do so, and we've done that. And they can go into my accounts, and they did this because I received a notice from Google.
The encrypted emails were not intercepted by the government in some way and then decrypted. You decrypted them and gave them to the government.
Yes, if they have something that I did not give to them, then it's by accident. But everything I've seen in the indictment, I think 95%, maybe more, was given by us, decrypted and given by us as part of the indictment. And the few things I saw that wasn't given by me, it's probably given by other people involved in this investigation on our side.
If I understand correctly, you offered up all of these emails before you were indicted. Is that right?
No, before I was indicted, yes, as part of the subpoena. Exactly.
You were voluntarily cooperating with the government, answered every question that they wanted, gave them every communication that they wanted. Of course,
because I believe what I gave them also confirmed what I told them earlier. Somehow, they believe it didn't. But look, they in the trial, and I've read the transcript, FBI agents and forensic experts testified, and they're saying they have abilities, they have my passwords. I also received notices from Google and other places that told me they received the government order to give up my passport, and they did. So they are able to see if I erased stuff, what I erased. They're able to see, all of my emails. They have special software that allows them to search on keywords. They have everything. I mean, the full weight of the United States intelligence community was used, I have to assume, for this. I mean, since they are saying U.S. national security was threatened, so I want to assume that they did their job and used everything that was at their disposal, and they haven't found anything. You would think if I was this, the world's greatest spy master, that we would have, that they would have found a little bit more. I mean, what is it in the end that we did? And we stopped. I mean, the entire engagement stopped before the election. I mean, we did not even interact during the transition or afterwards. So there's not a single message between me, and they're spreading these rumors on purpose. Just before the Bijan Kian trial started, the prosecution came up with this idea that there are multiple pieces of evidence in the possession of the United States government about communication between me and General Flynn. And as I've said before, there isn't. They're lying.
Well, they might be telling the truth. There might be, you know, you might have sent a message, you know, an innocuous message, but they can say that it was independent of Bijan Kian, and then they can keep the idea of this collusion alive, even though the Bijan Kian conviction has been overturned as completely baseless.
I wish, and if there's any way I can authorize it, I would. I wish that every phone call, every you know, conversation we've had over various internet programs like Skype or anything, or even our personal meetings, including that now infamous meeting in New York. I wish we had records of transcripts and wiretaps of all these meetings, because the only thing they would show, they would position General Flynn as a knowledgeable expert in international relations and an American patriot. And I hope I would come off well as well. And Bijan certainly would come off as an upstanding citizen, someone who's trying to do what's best for his country. So there's never been anything that we discussed that comes close to, let's do this and then hide that and then conspire to do that. Let's lie about this. None of that. Never.
Well, I completely agree with you. I mean, I'm sure you're correct. I feel that you're owed an apology, and including restitution. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to do anything about that. But I can.
Money, but maybe they can stop giving Gulen some the taxpayers' money.
Yeah, well, that would be a reward. That would be a reward too. Yeah. I think we've covered all the major issues. Is there anything else you want to say? If not, we can close it down, I think.
No, just send my greetings to everyone in DC. Tell them I'm very eager to visit again and hopefully have dinners with friends, with my American friends again.
Have you?
I would love to be back.
Have you had since the? When's the last time you had any communication with direct or indirect with Mike Flynn?
Not since the indictment. Not even since the subpoenas. We had that. No, I mean, maybe even before that. We've had zero, because the lawyers say that it may have been construed as trying to coordinate our stories or whatever. So we've had zero interactions. It's one of the preposterous accusations is that the prosecutor says that since we're that the fact that General Flynn and me are telling the same story, it's circumstantial evidence that we have matched that we coordinated our story, and it's matching lies. Matching lies. When two people tell the truth, they also say the same. I mean, in my law enforcement experience, you put two people in a different room, and if they have opposing stories, then you get that should arouse your suspicion, right? I mean, if you talk to them separately, there's absolutely no information that you have that they have interacted directly or indirectly, electronically or otherwise with each other. We have never coordinated our stories, and we're saying the exact same thing. Could it possibly be because we're telling the truth, Mr. Prosecutor?
That's amazing.
You have to understand, the moment the Trump campaign won the election, General Flynn assumed the public responsibility. He was a different person at that point. So he was no longer engaged with me in a commercial setting. We have had extremely little interaction, maybe other than congratulate him on the inauguration day or something like that. But all of this, the prosecution has this, and you know, the suggestion that they have something else, it's simply not true. I dare them to make it public. We have had no interaction. There's been no coordination on our part whatsoever. At some point, it was so crazy, because our lawyers advise us not to talk. I felt weird for not communicating with Bijan Kian, especially, because this is someone I celebrated Christmas with. So I knew this was very hard on him. I knew, I know his children, I know his wife, and I wanted to talk to my friend. And my lawyer said, you can't. So at some point I said, can I wish him Merry Christmas? Can I just send him a message saying, because it was the next Christmas already, and the previous Christmas we'd spent together with our families. And my lawyer said, no, you can't. And then I said, would you be willing, as my lawyer, to tell his lawyer that I'm wishing him well and Merry Christmas? And my lawyer said, no, we cannot, because even the Merry Christmas would maybe interpreted as a code or something, some sort of a communication between the two of you. So the answer is no, Mike. We did not communicate. We did not communicate, and that's another. I mean, they say you're innocent until proven guilty, but we've not been able to talk to many of our friends for several years right now, and you're being punished. And we're not proven guilty. It's the opposite. It's been proven that we're not guilty. But despite that, I'm not able to travel. Internationally, no bank wants to open a bank account for you. And I mean, we discussed all of this. So, I mean, at some point it has to end. So we can wish each other Merry Christmas again.
Okay, so you can publicly wish.
I'm not sure. I'm still hesitant. I'm not sure. I'm not saying anything.
Okay, that's probably good advice. Don't say anything at all.
Okay.
All right. Well, listen, it was a great honor and pleasure to talk to you. And again, I'm very sorry for all that you've had to go through. And I admire the strength and the good nature that you show under this incredible challenge.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, and we hope to see you back here. There's a lot more to talk about.
Definitely. I look forward to being back in the United States. Say hi to all of our friends there.
Except the
indicted ones.
I won't say anything to the indicted ones. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
I almost hang up, but I forgot that we're not really hanging up.
Oh, I'm going to stop recording though. How do I?